Some men are measured by the cars they drive, the suits they wear, or the zeros in their bank accounts. But on that October morning, kneeling in 3 inches of water on a stranger's bathroom floor, Wyatt Sullivan learned something different. Value isn't always visible from the outside. Sometimes it's buried in the work nobody wants to do, in the problems nobody else can fix, in the dignity of showing up when everything around you is falling apart. The call had come at 7:45. Emergency, CEO penthouse, downtown Seattle, water everywhere. Wyatt had thrown his toolbox in the back of his Ford F-150, the same truck he'd driven for 15 years, and made it across the city in 23 minutes. The building's concierge had looked at his work boots and stained flannel shirt with barely concealed distaste before directing him to the private elevator. 42nd floor, the kind of address that made Wyatt's monthly rent look like pocket change. The woman who opened the door wore an Armani suit that probably cost more than his truck's last 3 repair bills combined. Dark hair pulled back in a knot so tight it looked painful. Eyes the color of slate, sharp enough to cut. She didn't introduce herself, didn't smile, didn't waste a single second on pleasantries. The words came out clipped, efficient. Bathroom, pipe burst, board meeting in 30 minutes, fix it. Wyatt followed her through a penthouse that belonged in magazines he'd never read. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Furniture that looked uncomfortable on purpose. Everything white or gray or black, nothing warm, nothing lived in. The bathroom was the size of his entire kitchen. Water pooled across heated marble floors, seeping toward the hallway. The woman stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching him like she was timing a race. He set down his toolbox and knelt, ignoring the water soaking through his jeans. The problem revealed itself in 30 seconds. Supply valve cracked clean through, probably from over-tightened installation by someone who didn't know better. Amateur work. The kind of mistake that came from hiring the cheapest contractor instead of the best. His hands moved through the repair automatically. Shut off the main line, remove the damaged valve, install the replacement he kept in his truck for exactly these emergencies. Tighten it properly, test the pressure check for leaks. The woman didn't move from the doorway. She watched every motion with an intensity that made the back of his neck prickle. He'd worked in plenty of expensive homes before, but nobody had ever studied him quite like this. 18 minutes. He dried his hands on a rag and stood. The water had already started draining through the floor vents. Her eyes flicked to her watch, then back to his face. How much? $350 seemed fair. Parts labor emergency rate. He'd charged the same for 20 years, adjusting only for inflation. Never gouged anyone, never cut corners, never took advantage of desperation. She pulled a checkbook from somewhere, wrote quickly, tore it off, and held it out. $500. The tip felt wrong somehow, like charity, like she was trying to buy something besides a fixed pipe. Wyatt shook his head and pulled out his invoice pad instead. The words came out rougher than intended. I don't take charity, ma'am. $350's the job. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe. Or annoyance. Hard to tell with features that controlled. She stared at him for a long moment, and Wyatt had the strange sensation of being evaluated. Measured, cataloged. Then she wrote another check, this one for the exact amount, signed it with a flourish that looked like anger. Walking back to his truck, Wyatt couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just failed some kind of test he hadn't known he was taking. Rich people were always strange about money. They threw it around like it meant nothing, then got offended when you didn't want it. He tossed his toolbox in the truck bed and headed toward Ballard, toward the life that made sense, toward the only thing in Seattle he'd ever truly understood. Finn was waiting on the front steps when Wyatt pulled up at 3:30. 7 years old, backpack sliding off one shoulder, gap-toothed grin splitting his face like sunrise. The kid had his mother's eyes, the same dark blue that used to make Wyatt's chest ache. Now they just reminded him that some people leave and some people stay, and you can't always predict which is which. The house was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, kitchen, barely big enough for a table. Built in 1947, original hardwood floors, pipes that groaned in winter, roof that would need replacing in another year or two. But it was clean, it was paid for, and it was theirs. Dinner happened the same way it happened every night. Spaghetti, because Wyatt could cook exactly 3 meals, and Finn had eaten the other 2 yesterday. The boy sat at the kitchen table, swinging his legs, homework spread out between them. Math problems. Long division. Wyatt checked each answer patiently while the pasta water boiled. Finn's pencil paused mid-problem. Dad, how come you don't go on dates? The question landed like a wrench in moving gears. Wyatt kept his eyes on the homework buying time. Busy with work, bud. You know that? Ms. Peterson says you're a good man. The pencil started moving again, filling in numbers with careful precision. She says Mom was stupid for leaving. Something sharp twisted under Wyatt's ribs. Teachers shouldn't tell kids things like that, even when they were true. Your mom wanted a different life. That's not stupid, it's just different. Finn looked up, and the expression on his face was too old for 7, too knowing, too sad. But you're not different. You're still here. Yeah, still here. Still showing up every morning. Still fixing what broke. Still trying to be enough for a kid who deserved more than a father who smelled like pipe joint compound and couldn't afford the fancy summer camps where other kids went. They ate in comfortable silence. Spaghetti with jarred sauce, garlic bread from the grocery store bakery, salad from a bag. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive, but it filled bellies, and it was made with clean hands and love. That had to count for something. Finn went to bed at 8:30 the same time every night. Dinosaur pajamas, stuffed triceratops under one arm, the bedtime routine they'd built together after Jennifer left. Story first, then lights out. Then the door cracked exactly 3 inches. Wyatt stood in the hallway for a minute after listening to his son's breathing, even out feeling the familiar weight of single parenthood settle across his shoulders. The garage workshop waited. Receipts to file invoices, to send equipment to clean. Wyatt had just started organizing his toolbox when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Probably spam. Probably some robocall trying to sell him something he'd never be able to afford. But his thumb hit accept anyway, and a voice he recognized came through the line. Cool. Controlled. The same tone she'd used to tell him to fix her bathroom. Mr. Sullivan, this is Victoria Lawson. We met this morning. I have an unusual proposal. Please call me back. The message ended. Wyatt stared at his phone like it had just spoken ancient Greek. CEO types didn't call plumbers at 11 at night. They especially didn't call plumbers who'd refuse their tips. This had to be some kind of mistake. He saved the number but didn't call back. Whatever she wanted, it could wait until morning. He had invoices to finish, and a kid who might wake up with nightmares and rich people's unusual proposals had never done him any favors before. Sleep came hard that night. Wyatt kept thinking about slate gray eyes and checkbooks and the word unusual. His dreams were full of pipes that wouldn't stop leaking and water that rose no matter how fast he worked. Friday morning started the same as every other. Coffee at 6, Finn up at 6:30, breakfast, teeth, shoes, backpack. The drive to school took 12 minutes. Wyatt watched his son disappear through the doors, mixing with dozens of other kids, and felt the familiar tug of worry. Was Finn happy? Did the other kids like him? Would he grow up ashamed of a father who worked with his hands instead of his mind? The phone buzzed before Wyatt made it back to the truck. Same unknown number, but this time she didn't leave a message. Just called again an hour later. Then again at 9:30. On the 4th attempt, Wyatt finally answered. Her voice sounded more strained than yesterday. McGullivan, thank you for taking my call. He leaned against the truck's tailgate, watching traffic crawl past on Market Street. Ma'am, you can call me Wyatt. Mr. Sullivan's my father. A pause, like she was recalculating something. Wyatt, I need to meet with you, today if possible. I have a business proposition. Business proposition. The words tasted wrong. Men like Wyatt didn't get business propositions from women like her. They got service calls and polite dismissals and occasional tips they were too proud to accept. But Finn needed new shoes. The truck's transmission was making a noise that spelled expensive, and something in Victoria Lawson's voice sounded almost desperate, which made no sense at all for a woman who lived 42 floors above the rest of the city. The address she gave was downtown, her office. 10th floor of a building with her family's name carved into the granite facade. Wyatt changed into cleaner jeans in his newest flannel shirt, the one without any stains, and felt ridiculous doing it, like putting a fresh coat of paint on a house with a crumbling foundation. The office suite belonged on a different planet. Glass walls, leather furniture view that stretched from the Space Needle to Mount Rainier. Victoria sat behind a desk that could have doubled as a landing strip wearing another suit that probably cost his monthly income. Her assistant offered coffee in a voice that suggested she rarely had to offer anything twice. Wyatt took the chair across from Victoria and waited. Years of fixing other people's problems had taught him patience. Let them talk first. Let them explain what's broken. Then figure out if you can fix it. She didn't waste time on small talk. I need to hire you for a job, not plumbing, something more personal. Every instinct Wyatt had developed over 4 decades screamed warning. Personal jobs for strangers never ended well. What kind of personal? I need you to pretend to be my boyfriend. One day, this Saturday, I'll pay you $5,000. The number hung in the air between them like smoke. $5,000. That was 3 months of mortgage payments. That was Finn's school supplies for the entire year. That was the transmission repair and new shoes and maybe even a weekend trip somewhere his son could make memories that didn't involve watching his father work himself to exhaustion. But it was also wrong, fundamentally obviously wrong. Wyatt's father had taught him that a man's worth came from honest labor, not from playing pretend for rich people's amusement. The question came out harder than intended. Why me? Victoria's fingers drummed once against the desk, the only crack in her careful composure. Because yesterday you turned down a $150 tip. That tells me you have principles. Principles can't be bought. The logic made no sense. Having principles meant he shouldn't take money for fake boyfriend duty. But before Wyatt could say so, Victoria kept talking, and the story that spilled out was nothing like what he'd expected. 10 years with someone named Nathaniel Bennett. Engagement that lasted 3 years without a wedding. Medical diagnosis that destroyed any hope of children. Pressure from Nathaniel's family, the kind of old money Seattle dynasty that measured worth in bloodlines and heirs. Victoria's decision to walk away rather than watch the man she loved slowly resent her for something she couldn't control. 4 months later, Nathaniel engaged to someone else. Someone younger, someone fertile, someone carrying his child. The wedding was Saturday. Victoria had promised to attend to prove she'd moved on, to show there were no hard feelings. But showing up alone would be admitting defeat. Admitting she was exactly what Nathaniel's mother always said she was. Not enough. Wyatt watched her face while she talked. The careful way she held her shoulders. The slight tension in her jaw. The way her eyes stayed fixed on some point past his left shoulder, never quite meeting his gaze. This was a woman used to being in control, and asking for help was clearly killing her. He understood that feeling better than she could possibly know. The words came before he could stop them. I know what that feels like. Feeling not good enough for someone you love. Now her eyes did meet his. Sharp and searching and surprised. Like she'd expected judgment instead of understanding. Wyatt's throat felt tight, but he pushed through. My wife left 5 years ago, said she couldn't live like this anymore. Married to a plumber, living in a tiny house, driving a 15-year-old truck. She wanted more. Deserved more, maybe. I couldn't give it to her. So she found someone who could. The silence stretched between them, full of recognition. Two people who'd been weighed and measured and found wanting by someone they'd trusted with their whole hearts. Victoria's voice came out softer than before. What happened to your son? She didn't want him. The words still burned even after 5 years. Left when he was 2. Hasn't called since. Finn doesn't remember her much. Sometimes I think that's a blessing. More silence. Then Victoria wrote something on a notepad, tore off the page, slid it across the desk. $7,000. Wyatt's hand stayed flat on his thighs. It's not about the money. Then why would you agree? Good question. Why would he agree to spend a day pretending to be someone he wasn't, in a world where he'd never belong, surrounded by people who'd see through him in seconds? The answer surprised him even as he said it, because nobody deserves to feel like they're not enough, especially when they already are. Something shifted in Victoria's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. Like she'd heard something she needed to hear. She stood, extended her hand across the desk, and when Wyatt shook it, her grip was firm and warm, and surprisingly calloused for someone who worked in an office. They spent the next hour building a cover story. Met 6 weeks ago when Victoria hired Wyatt for plumbing work at her penthouse. Ran into each other again at a coffee shop, started talking, went on a few casual dates. Nothing serious yet, but promising. Testing the waters. Seeing where it might go. Victoria took notes in neat handwriting. They'll ask what you do. Don't lie. Tell them you're a plumber. Own your own business. Small business. Wyatt felt the need to clarify. Just me and occasionally a helper when I need extra hands. That's still a business. You're self-employed. That takes courage. She tapped her pen against the notepad. Nathaniel's mother will try to make you feel small. She's good at that. Don't let her. Easier said than done. Wyatt had been around rich people enough to know they had subtle ways of putting working men in their place. A certain tone of voice, a carefully worded question, a look that said your hands might be useful but your opinions aren't welcome here. But he'd survived Jennifer's departure and single parenthood and more lonely nights than he cared to count. He could survive one afternoon of rich people's judgment. Victoria's next words pulled him back. You'll need a suit. Wyatt glanced down at his jeans and flannel. I have a suit from my wedding. Might be a little tight, but it won't work. She was already writing something on another sheet of paper. Nathaniel's crowd will spot off the rack from a mile away. They'll use it to dismiss you. We can't let them have that ammunition. She handed him a credit card, platinum. His name wasn't on it. Nordstrom downtown. Ask for Marcus in men's formal wear. Budget is $2,000. Get shoes, belt, everything. The card sat in Wyatt's palm like something explosive. I can't take this. It's not charity, it's work equipment. Would you show up to fix pipes without your tools? Her eyes held his steadily. This is armor. Saturday will be a battle. You need to look the part. That evening, Wyatt picked up Finn from school and broke the news. They were going suit shopping. At Nordstrom, the fancy department store downtown where Finn had once pressed his nose against the window to watch the holiday trains go by. Finn's eyes went huge. For real, can I come? 20 minutes later, they walked through doors that probably cost more than Wyatt's truck. The men's department stretched out like a foreign country, all dark wood and soft lighting, and clothes that looked like they'd never been worn. A sales associate spotted them immediately. Mid-30s impeccable hair suit that made Wyatt's wedding attire look like it came from a thrift store. The man's eyes traveled from Wyatt's work boots to Finn's dinosaur backpack to the grease stain Wyatt had missed on his sleeve. His smile stayed professional, but his tone shifted, taking on that particular quality Wyatt had learned to recognize. Dismissive, condescending. The voice people used when they'd already decided you couldn't afford to be there. Can I help you find something? Perhaps our casual section? Need a suit. Wyatt kept his voice level. Budget's $2,000. Victoria Lawson recommended I ask for Marcus. The associate's expression flickered. Marcus is with another client. Perhaps I could... We'll wait. Wyatt found a chair near the fitting rooms and sat. Finn climbed into the seat beside him, kicking his legs and oblivious to the tension crackling through the air. The sales associate disappeared. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finn had started coloring in a notebook when a voice rang out across the department, small and clear and furious. My dad has money. He's the best plumber in Seattle. Every head turned. Finn stood on his chair, face red, fists clenched. The sales associate had returned with another man, older, silver-haired, and they'd been talking in voices just loud enough to carry. Something about browser types and payment plans and maybe suggesting a more appropriate store. Wyatt's hands gripped the chair arms. Finn, down, now. But Dad? Now. The boy climbed down, eyes bright with tears he refused to shed. Wyatt stood, meaning to leave, meaning to take his son away from this place where they clearly weren't welcome. But before he could move, the elevator doors opened and Victoria stepped out. She took in the scene instantly. Wyatt and Finn near the fitting rooms, the sales associate looking uncomfortable, the older man with his fake apologetic smile. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted, straightening, sharpening. She walked directly to the older man's heels, clicking on the marble floor. Mr. Harrison, I didn't expect to see you here. Ms. Lawson, one of the man's voice oozed professional courtesy. How wonderful, I trust you're... This is Wyatt Sullivan. He's here at my request to purchase formal attire. Your associate seems to have forgotten his training. Each word landed like a hammer. If this continues, I'll ensure Lawson Pharmaceuticals reconsiders our corporate partnership with Nordstrom. We spent $1.3 million last quarter on employee wardrobe allowances alone. I'm certain other retailers would appreciate that business. Mr. Harrison's face went through several interesting colors. The sales associate looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Within 30 seconds, Marcus appeared from somewhere in the back, all smiles and efficiency, already pulling measurement tape from his pocket. The next hour transformed into something almost pleasant. Marcus knew his trade. He brought out 3 suits in Wyatt's size, explained the differences in cut and fabric, made suggestions without being pushy. Finn sat nearby, coloring contentedly, occasionally looking up to offer opinions on which tie looked best. Victoria watched from a chair by the window, laptop open, apparently working while supervising. But Wyatt caught her glancing up each time he emerged from the fitting room, saw the slight nod when Marcus showed her the final selection. The suit was charcoal gray. Hugo Boss. Fit like it had been made for him. Wyatt stared at his reflection and barely recognized the man looking back. Marcus added a crisp white shirt, burgundy tie, black leather shoes that probably cost more than his monthly insurance premium. Belt, pocket square, cufflinks and brushed steel. Finn bounced up and down. "Dad, you look like you're in a movie." That's exactly what this was. A movie. A costume. Armor for a battle Wyatt still wasn't sure he could win. But wearing it, seeing Victoria's small smile of approval, feeling the quality of fabric that would never wear out or fade, Wyatt had to admit something shifted inside him. Not confidence exactly, more like possibility, the sense that maybe he could survive in her world for one day without embarrassing either of them. Victoria walked them to the parking garage. Her Mercedes sat 3 spots from Wyatt's truck, the contrast almost comical. She glanced at the Ford's dented bumper and faded paint, but said nothing. Her voice stayed professional. "Tomorrow night, come to my place at 7. We need to practice." Practice what?" "Looking like we know each other, like we've touched before, like this is real." She handed him a garment bag with the suit inside. "Small details matter. Nathaniel's mother will be watching for cracks." Driving home, Finn chattered about the shopping trip, about the fancy store, about how Dad looked like a superhero. But Wyatt's mind was stuck on Victoria's last words. "Looking like we've touched before." The thought made his stomach twist in ways he didn't want to examine. Friday evening melted into night. Finn's bedtime routine, dishes, workshop time. Wyatt cleaned his tools with more care than usual, organizing everything twice, killing time before he had to drive back downtown and pretend to be someone he wasn't. Victoria's penthouse looked different at night, softer somehow, with city lights glittering through those massive windows. She changed out of her work suit into jeans and a sweater, and the casual clothes made her seem almost human, almost approachable. They sat at her kitchen table, and she pulled out a notepad covered in neat handwriting. Background first, how we met. They went through it step by step. Plumbing emergency, chance meeting at a coffee shop 2 weeks later. Victoria had been having a bad day, snapped at a barista, and Wyatt had intervened, quietly diffused the situation. She'd recognized him, apologized, offered to buy his coffee. They talked for an hour, exchanged numbers, started texting. First date the following weekend, dinner at a casual restaurant in Ballard, nowhere fancy, Victoria's choice because she wanted to see his world. Second date a week later, walk around Green Lake, more conversation, easy laughter. Third date just a few days ago, cooking dinner at Wyatt's place, meeting Finn, seeing if this could be something real. The story felt both fabricated and true. Parts of it could have happened. Would have been nice if they had. Victoria's pen paused over the paper. "They'll ask about your son, how I feel about him." "What should you say?" "That he's wonderful, smart, funny, that any woman would be lucky to be part of his life." She said it without looking up, but something in her voice made Wyatt's chest tight. Like she actually meant it, despite never having met the kid. They practiced other things. How to stand together without looking stiff. How he should touch her back when they walk casual and proprietary. Where she'd rest her hand when they sit, claiming space on his arm or shoulder. Small intimacies that couples shared without thinking. Every movement felt awkward and calculated. Wyatt's hand hovered near Victoria's waist. "This feels wrong, like we're lying." "We are lying," her voice was matter of fact. "But it's a lie with a truth underneath. I do need someone in my corner tomorrow. You're choosing to be that person. The rest is just performance." She was right, but it still felt dishonest. Wyatt had spent his whole life trying to be genuine, trying to be straightforward, trying to be the kind of man his father would be proud of. Pretending went against everything he'd been taught. Victoria must have seen something in his face. If you want to back out, I'll understand. The words came before he could think, I'm not backing out. They practiced for another hour, cover story, body language, how to deflect uncomfortable questions. By the time Wyatt left, his head spun with details and his shoulders ached from tension. But walking to his truck, feeling night air cool against his skin, he realized something strange. For the first time in 5 years, he'd spent an evening with a woman and it hadn't felt like work. It had felt like something else, something he wasn't ready to name. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of perfect October weather Seattle rarely delivered. Clear skies, temperature in the mid-60s, sunlight turning the water gold. Wyatt woke early, stared at the ceiling, tried to convince himself this was just another job, another problem to solve, another day of showing up and doing what needed to be done. Finn bounced around the kitchen while Wyatt attempted breakfast. Where are you going all fancy? Work thing. In a suit, skeptical 7-year-old eyes. You never wear suits for work. Different kind of work. Wyatt flipped pancakes, grateful for something to focus on besides his nerves. Remember that lady from Nordstrom? She needs help with something today. Is she your girlfriend? The question hit harder than expected. Wyatt set down the spatula carefully. No, we're just friends. But you like her. Not a question, a statement. The kid was too observant for his own good. I barely know her. Finn poured syrup over his pancakes with deliberate precision. You smile different when you talk about her. Not your regular smile. A different one. Out of the mouths of babes. Wyatt filed that observation away to worry about later. He dropped Finn at his parents' house at noon. His mother, Margaret, had the door open before he reached the porch, taking in his suit and dress shoes with raised eyebrows. Well now, don't you clean up nice? She hugged him, smelling of flower and lavender. Special occasion, kind of. Wyatt kissed her cheek. Business meeting. Should be back by 9 or so. His father, Hank, appeared in the doorway, retired plumber with 35 years under his belt and opinions about everything. He looked Wyatt up and down, grunted, Don't let the fancy clothes make you forget who you are, son. Advice Wyatt definitely needed to remember. Victoria's Mercedes pulled up to his house at exactly 2 o'clock. She drove herself, no chauffeur today, wearing a dress that probably cost more than his mortgage. Deep blue, perfectly tailored, nothing showy, but undeniably expensive. Her hair was down for the first time since he'd met her, falling past her shoulders in dark waves. Wyatt climbed into the passenger seat and felt immediately out of place. The car smelled like leather and some subtle perfume. Classical music played softly through speakers that probably cost more than his entire sound system at home. Victoria glanced at him. You look good. Feel like a fraud. Welcome to my entire life. She pulled into traffic with easy confidence. The trick is remembering that everyone's pretending something. We're just more honest about it. The drive to Mercer Island took 40 minutes. Traffic on the floating bridge was light water, sparkling on both sides. Victoria kept her eyes on the road, but her hands gripped the steering wheel too tight. She was nervous. The realization made Wyatt feel slightly better about his own churning stomach. The Bennett estate revealed itself gradually. Iron gates, long driveway lined with maples turning gold and red. The main house sat on a rise overlooking Lake Washington, all stone and timber and architectural significance. Cars already packed the circular drive. Mercedes, BMW, Tesla, Range Rover. A few classic vehicles that probably cost 6 figures. Wyatt's mental calculator was running numbers he'd never comprehend. Victoria parked at the end of the line. Neither of them moved immediately. Through the windshield, Wyatt could see guests milling around champagne glasses, catching sunlight, women in designer dresses, and men in suits that made his Hugo Boss look almost casual. His voice came out rougher than intended. Not too late to turn around. Yes, it is. But Victoria didn't open her door. Wyatt, I need you to understand something. These people will try to make you feel small. They're good at it. They've had generations of practice. I've been made to feel small before. I'm still standing. Now she did look at him, and something in her expression made his breath catch. You're a good man, better than most people I know. Don't let them convince you otherwise. They got out. Victoria came around the car, and Wyatt offered his arm without thinking, some half-remembered etiquette from his wedding 15 years ago. She took at her hand settling into the crook of his elbow like it belonged there. They walked toward the house and Wyatt felt every eye turn to track their progress. The whispers started immediately. Quiet, but not quiet enough. Who is that with Victoria? I didn't know she was seeing anyone. Where did she find him? Probably some rebound thing. He doesn't look like her usual type. Wyatt kept his spine straight and his face neutral. Inside, though, his stomach roiled. This was a mistake. He didn't belong here. These people could smell working class from 100 yards away, and they were already circling like sharks, sensing blood in the water. Victoria's hand tightened on his arm. Breathe, I've got you. The entry hall was all soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers. A string quartet played something classical. Staff circulated with champagne flutes and appetizers that looked too pretty to eat. Guests clustered in groups laughing at jokes Wyatt wouldn't understand, discussing things he'd never care about. He'd fixed pipes in houses like this before, always using the service entrance, always careful not to track dirt on the expensive rugs. They signed the guest book. Victoria's handwriting was neat and confident. Wyatt's looked childish next to it, all awkward angles and uneven pressure. A woman materialized beside them. Late 30s blonde, expensively maintained smile sharp enough to draw blood. Victoria, you actually came. Victoria's voice stayed smooth. Lauren, of course I came. I said I would. Lauren's eyes slid to Wyatt with barely concealed curiosity. And you brought someone. How mysterious. This is Wyatt Sullivan, Wyatt Lauren Patterson. We went to college together. Wyatt extended his hand and Lauren shook it limply, like touching him might leave a stain. Sullivan. Interesting. What do you do? The question everyone would ask. The test Victoria had warned him about. Wyatt met Lauren's gaze steadily. I'm a plumber, run my own business. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds, but felt like an hour. Lauren's smile froze. Her eyes widened just slightly. She glanced at Victoria like checking to see if this was a joke. Oh. Lauren's laugh came out forced. That's how practical. Victoria always did have unusual taste. She drifted away quickly, already pulling out her phone, no doubt texting other people about Victoria's shocking choice in companionship. Wyatt felt something hot and tight in his chest. Anger, maybe, or shame. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. Victoria's voice was soft but fierce. You did perfectly. Don't let her get to you. She thinks I'm a joke. She thinks everyone's a joke unless they went to the right schools and belong to the right clubs. Her opinion is worthless. They moved deeper into the house. More introductions. More thinly veiled judgment. A man who worked in finance and couldn't quite hide his smirk. A woman in diamonds who asked Wyatt if he'd gone to college, clearly hoping the answer was no. A couple who turned away after learning what he did, suddenly needing to refill their drinks. 20 minutes in, and Wyatt wanted to leave. Walk out, drive home, forget he'd ever agreed to this disaster. But then he looked at Victoria's face, saw the careful way she held her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hand when she reached for champagne, and something shifted inside him. She needed this, needed him to stay, needed someone in her corner, needed proof that she wasn't alone. And Wyatt had never been good at walking away when someone needed him. A voice cut through the crowd, male and uncomfortable. Victoria. She turned and Wyatt felt her entire body tense. The man approaching was tall, dark-haired, good-looking, in that generic way rich men often were. Tuxedo that probably cost $5,000. Eyes that couldn't quite meet Victoria's. This had to be Nathaniel. Nathaniel! Victoria's voice could have cut glass. Congratulations. Nathaniel's gaze shifted to Wyatt, assessing, calculating. And you brought someone. That's great. Really great. I'm glad you're happy. The words rang hollow. Nathaniel wasn't glad. He was curious and maybe jealous and definitely thrown off balance. Wyatt extended his hand. Wyatt Sullivan. The handshake lasted too long. Nathaniel held on, searching Wyatt's face for something. What do you do? Plumber. Nathaniel blinked. Oh, that's different. Victoria's voice took on an edge. Wyatt owns his own business. Very successful. Stretching the truth, but Wyatt didn't correct her. Nathaniel released his hand, finally still looking confused, like he'd expected someone else. Someone from Victoria's world. Someone appropriate. A woman appeared at Nathaniel's elbow. Younger than Victoria by maybe 7 years, All blonde highlights and deliberate curves. The wedding dress was tasteful and expensive and couldn't quite hide the small bump of early pregnancy. Darling, her southern accent felt calculated. You disappeared. Nathaniel's smile looked pained. Amanda, this is Victoria. I've told you about her. Amanda's eyes went wide with theatrical surprise. Oh my goodness, Victoria. Nathaniel's told me so much about you. Thank you for coming. I know this must be difficult. The sympathy in her voice was poison. Victoria's spine straightened another impossible inch. Not difficult at all. I wish you both every happiness. Amanda's hand drifted to her stomach in that universal gesture pregnant women made. Protective, triumphant, mine. And who is this handsome gentleman? Amanda's accent got thicker, her smile brighter, her entire demeanor shifting into performance mode. Wyatt, he didn't elaborate, didn't need to. Amanda's gaze had already swept over him and dismissed him as unimportant. Well, aren't you sweet to come support Victoria today? She patted Victoria's arm like comforting a child. I'm sure it means the world to her to have someone here. The words were designed to wound, to imply Victoria was pathetic, that Wyatt was charity, that this whole situation was quoted and everyone knew it. Wyatt felt Victoria's hand tremble against his arm, felt the careful way she held herself, felt the moment stretching too long, filling with something ugly. His voice came out calm and steady. I'm here because I want to be. Victoria's the most impressive person I've ever met. You two enjoy your wedding. We'll be around. He guided Victoria away before either of them could respond. Her hand was ice cold against his sleeve. They made it to the edge of the room before she stopped, turned to face him, eyes bright with something that might have been tears or rage or both. Thank you, barely a whisper. For that, I meant it. I know. She looked away. That's what makes it worse somehow. You don't know me well enough to mean it, but you said it anyway. The ceremony started before Wyatt could respond. Guests filtered into the back garden where rows of white chairs faced an altar covered in flowers that probably cost more than his monthly income. Victoria and Wyatt found seats near the back as far from the front as possible while still being present. Music swelled. Amanda appeared at the far end of the aisle in a dress that belonged in magazines. Nathaniel stood at the altar looking nervous and trapped. The officiant began speaking about love and commitment in building a life together. Wyatt felt Victoria go very still beside him. Her breathing changed rhythm, getting shallow and quick, her hands clenched in her lap. She was unraveling and trying desperately to hide it. He leaned close, voice low enough only she could hear, "You okay?" A tiny shake of her head. Not okay. Very much not okay. The vows started, Nathaniel promising to build a family to give Amanda everything she deserved, to honor the traditions their families had maintained for generations. Every word felt aimed at Victoria, every promise a reminder of what she couldn't give. Amanda's vows were worse, thanking Nathaniel for choosing her, for seeing her value, for understanding what real partnership meant. The implication hung heavy. Victoria hadn't been a real partner. Victoria had been insufficient. Wyatt watched Victoria's profile, saw a single tear slide down her cheek before she caught it with her knuckle, saw the way she bit her lower lip to keep it from trembling. This was torture, and he was watching it happen, and he couldn't stop it. So he did the only thing he could think of. He reached over and took her hand. Victoria's fingers locked onto his like a drowning person grabbing a lifeline. She didn't look at him, kept her eyes forward, kept her face carefully neutral. But her grip said everything words couldn't. The ceremony ended. Nathaniel kissed Amanda. Applause rippled through the crowd. The newlyweds walked back down the aisle, beaming perfect, exactly what everyone expected them to be. When they'd passed, Wyatt leaned close again. Want to leave? Victoria shook her head. Can't, not yet. They'll think they broke me. You're already broken. She finally looked at him, eyes red-rimmed but fierce. Then help me look whole. The reception sprawled across a white pavilion tent large enough to house aircraft. Crystal chandeliers hung from support beams wrapped in silk. Tables dressed in cream linen held centerpieces that cost more than Wyatt's monthly groceries. A live band played jazz standards while staff circulated with trays of food that looked like art installations. Wyatt and Victoria were seated at table 14, practically in the service quarter. The placement wasn't accidental. Far enough from the head table to be forgotten, close enough to the exits to make leaving easy. Their table mates were distant Bennett cousins who introduced themselves with polite disinterest before turning to more interesting conversation partners. Victoria pushed food around her plate without eating. Salmon that probably cost $40. Vegetables carved into geometric shapes. Bread so artisanal it had a story. Wyatt ate because his body needed fuel and wasting food felt wrong, but he tasted nothing. Across the tent, Nathaniel and Amanda held court, laughing, kissing for the cameras, playing their parts perfectly. Nathaniel's eyes kept drifting toward table 14, though. Searching, finding Victoria, lingering too long before Amanda pulled his attention back. The speeches started after dessert. Best man telling sanitized stories about Nathaniel's college days. Maid of honor gushing about Amanda's beauty and grace. Then Constance Bennett was champagne flute in hand, and the temperature in the tent dropped 10 degrees. She was elegant in the way old money always managed. Pearl gray dress, diamonds at her throat, silver hair styled into submission. Her smile never reached her eyes. When Nathaniel was born, I knew he would achieve great things, carry on the Bennett legacy with pride and purpose. Her gaze swept the room, landed briefly on Victoria like a targeting laser. I always knew he would find the right woman, someone who truly understands what family means to our bloodline. The emphasis on understands hit like a physical blow. Wyatt felt Victoria flinch beside him. Constance continued building momentum. Someone who can give him everything a Bennett man deserves. Everything his father and grandfather and great-grandfather built this family to become. The word everything carried weight, implication, cruelty. Victoria's water glass trembled in her hand. And I'm absolutely thrilled to announce that Amanda is expecting not just one child, but twins. 2 boys. The Bennett legacy secured for another generation. Our family's future guaranteed by a woman who understands her role, her duty, her purpose. Applause erupted. Constance raised her glass. Nathaniel looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Amanda beamed one hand on her belly, accepting congratulations from nearby tables. Victoria set down her glass very carefully. Her face stayed neutral, but Wyatt saw the muscle jumping in her jaw, saw the way her hands shook before she pressed them flat against her thighs, saw the exact moment she decided she couldn't take another second. She stood. Wyatt rose with her, following her lead. They moved toward the exit, and whispers tracked their progress like searchlights. Leaving already? Can't handle it. Pathetic, really. Should have stayed home. Constance intercepted them in the hallway outside the tent. She moved fast for a woman in her 60s heels, clicking on flagstone expression, carved from ice. Miss Lawson, leaving so soon? Victoria's voice came out steady despite everything. Yes, thank you for your hospitality, Mrs. Bennett. And taking your companion with you. Constance's eyes raked over Wyatt with open contempt. Mr. Sullivan, that name doesn't appear in any of our usual social circles. Wyatt kept his voice level. I'm a plumber, ma'am. Don't expect we'd cross paths often. The admission landed like throwing gasoline on embers. Constance's smile sharpened. A plumber. How charmingly blue-collar. Victoria, you always did have interesting taste in projects. The word projects dripped with venom. Like Wyatt was something, Victoria was trying to fix something temporary, something disposable. His jaw tightened. I'm here because Victoria's worth defending. That's more than I can say for anyone in this tent who watched you humiliate her and said nothing. Constance's eyes narrowed. Strong words from someone who works with his hands. Tell me, Mr. Sullivan, how long do you think this little arrangement will last? Victoria is accustomed to a certain lifestyle. Can you provide that on a plumber's salary? The question was designed to expose him, to make him admit he was out of his depth, to prove Victoria was slumming for attention. But Wyatt had spent 48 years being underestimated by people who thought manual labor meant inferior intellect. Ma'am, the only thing Victoria needs from me is honesty, something your family seems allergic to. He took Victoria's hand, laced their fingers together deliberately. We're leaving now. Enjoy your party. They walked away while Constance stood frozen, apparently unused to being dismissed. Victoria didn't speak until they reached the car. Then she sagged against the passenger door, all her careful composure crumbling at once. I can't believe you said that to her. Oh, half laugh, half sob. No one talks to Constance Bennett like that. Wyatt opened her door. Maybe someone should have started years ago. The drive back to Seattle felt longer than the journey out. Victoria sat very still, staring at the lake sliding past, saying nothing. Wyatt didn't push. Some silences needed space to breathe. Traffic on the bridge was lighter now, evening sun turning everything golden. Victoria's phone buzzed repeatedly, but she ignored it. Text after text, call after call. Finally, she powered it off completely and tossed it in her purse. Wyatt's voice was quiet. You okay? No. She turned to look at him, and her eyes were raw. But I will be, eventually. He wanted to say something comforting, something wise, something that would ease the pain carved into her features. But Wyatt had learned long ago that some wounds couldn't be fixed with words. Sometimes you just had to sit with the hurt until it transformed into something survivable. They stopped at a diner off Aurora Avenue. Wyatt's choice a place he'd been taking Finn for Saturday breakfast since the kid was 3. Red vinyl booths, checkered floors, waitresses who called everyone honey and meant it. Victoria looked wildly out of place in her designer dress, but she slid into the booth without complaint. The waitress brought coffee without being asked. Victoria wrapped both hands around the mug like seeking warmth. Tell me about your ex-wife. The question came from nowhere, or maybe from everywhere. What was she like? Wyatt considered lying, deflecting, keeping his wounds private. But Victoria had bled in front of him today. Seemed fair to return the favor. Jennifer was smart, funny, beautiful when she smiled, which used to be often. We met when I was 28, married at 30. She liked that I worked with my hands, said it was sexy to watch me fix things. He paused, remembering. Then Finn came along, and suddenly being a plumber wasn't sexy anymore. It was limiting. It was embarrassing. It was the reason we couldn't go on fancy vacations or join the country club her friends belonged to. Victoria's eyes stayed on his face, listening with an intensity that made him want to look away. She started mentioning other jobs I could do. Sales, maybe, real estate, something with commission potential. I tried explaining that I loved plumbing, that there was honor in skilled trades, that we had enough money for a good life, even if it wasn't a rich one. Wyatt's coffee had gone cold, but he drank it anyway. She left the day Finn turned 2, said she couldn't watch me waste my potential anymore. Said she'd signed up for a different life and I'd failed to deliver. Did she ask for custody? Didn't want it. Signed away her parental rights 6 months later. Hasn't called or visited since. As far as I know, she's in California with some software executive who gives her the life she thinks she deserves. Victoria's hand reached across the table, covered his. The touch was warm and solid and utterly unexpected. You didn't fail. She did. Walking away from her child because you weren't rich enough makes her the failure, not you. Something in Wyatt's chest loosened. He turned his hand over, threaded their fingers together. They sat that way for a long time, not talking, just existing in shared understanding. The waitress brought burgers and fries and milkshakes thick enough to require effort. Victoria ate like she'd discovered food for the first time. 3 bites in, she actually smiled. This is better than the wedding salmon. Everything's better than wedding salmon. They finished eating as twilight deepened into night. Wyatt paid cash despite Victoria's protest. This wasn't work anymore. Hadn't been for hours. This was 2 people finding refuge in each other's damage. Outside, standing by Victoria's Mercedes in a parking lot that smelled of French fries and possibility, the moment stretched, awkward and electric. Victoria's keys dangled from her hand, but she didn't unlock the car. Thank you for today, for being there when I needed someone. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. Her eyes searched his face. Wyatt, I know this was supposed to be business. One day performance done. But I need you to know that somewhere in the middle of all that pretending, it stopped feeling fake. His heart did something complicated in his chest, painful and hopeful at once. For me, too. They stood close enough that Wyatt could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. Close enough that leaning in would be easy, natural, the obvious next step. Victoria's gaze dropped to his mouth and her breath hitched. Then his phone rang. The ringtone was specific, the one he'd set for emergencies. Wyatt pulled it out, saw his mother's name, felt cold wash through him. I need to take this. Victoria nodded, stepped back. Wyatt answered, and his mother's voice came through. tight with apology. Honey, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Finn's asking for you, says his stomach hurts. I think he's just anxious, you know how he gets, but he won't settle down. The moment shattered, reality crashed back in. Wyatt had a son who needed him responsibilities that didn't pause for confusing feelings in parking lots. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and Victoria was already unlocking her car. Go, your son needs you. Can I call you tomorrow? She paused, hand on the door handle. I'd like that. Wyatt drove home faster than he should have. Collected Finn from his parents, carried a sleepy 7-year-old to bed. Finn's stomach was fine. He just missed his dad, needed reassurance, wanted to know everything was okay. Wyatt sat on the edge of his son's bed and told him yes, everything was okay, even though he wasn't sure that was true. Lying in his own bed, later staring at ceiling shadows, Wyatt replayed the day. Victoria's hand in his during the ceremony. Her fierce expression when he stole it up to Constance. The way she'd looked at him in the parking lot like he was something precious instead of something convenient. His phone buzzed, text from Victoria. Thank you again. Today meant more than you know. Sleep well. He typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on sweet dreams. Then he lay awake for 2 more hours trying to figure out when pretending had turned into something real and what the hell he was supposed to do about it. Sunday morning, Wyatt took Finn to the hardware store needing normalcy and familiar routines. They bought supplies for a bathroom remodel job scheduled for Monday. Finn pushed the cart, asking questions about pipe fittings and sealant and compounds, soaking up information the way he always did. Dad, do you like that lady from yesterday? The question came while they were comparing wrench sizes. Wyatt set down the tool he'd been examining. What makes you ask that? You were smiling when you came to get me. A real smile, not your fake one. Kids noticed everything. Wyatt crouched to Finn's eye level. Yeah, buddy, I like her, but it's complicated. How to explain class differences and social expectations to a 7-year-old. We're from different worlds. She's rich. I'm not. That makes things hard sometimes. Finn's face scrunched up in that expression he made when adults said something confusing. But you're both people. That's the same world. Out of the mouths of children. Wyatt hugged his son, breathing in the smell of kid shampoo and innocence. That evening, after Finn was asleep, Wyatt's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, expecting a robocall, but something made him pick up. Constance Bennett's voice dripped through the line like poison. Mr. Sullivan, I hope I'm not interrupting your evening. Every muscle in Wyatt's body went tight. What do you want? I thought we should have a conversation, adult to adult, about Victoria's future and what's realistically possible for someone in your position. Her tone stayed pleasant, which somehow made it worse. You seem like a decent man, hardworking, principled, but surely you recognize the incompatibility here. I don't see any incompatibility. Don't you? Victoria runs an $800 million company. She sits on boards, attends galas, moves in circles that require a certain level of sophistication. Can you honestly provide that lifestyle? Wyatt's free hand clenched. She doesn't need me to provide it. She's got her own money. True, but relationships require balance, Mr. Sullivan. Victoria needs a partner who can match her intellectually, socially, professionally. Someone who won't be embarrassed when she has to explain what her boyfriend does for a living. The words hit harder than they should have. Wyatt knew he was being manipulated, knew Constance was playing on his insecurities deliberately. Didn't make it hurt less. I think this conversation is done. Wait, her voice sharpened. There's something else you should consider. Your son. Finn, isn't it? 7 years old, attends Greenwood Elementary. Sweet child. I'm sure you want what's best for him. Ice flooded Wyatt's veins. Don't you dare bring my son into this. I'm merely pointing out reality. When Victoria realizes this relationship isn't sustainable, she'll leave. Just like your ex-wife did. And poor Finn will lose another mother figure. Children shouldn't have to experience that kind of abandonment twice. The threat was veiled but clear. Constance had done research, knew about Jennifer, knew exactly where to twist the knife. Worse, she was right about one thing. Finn would get attached if this continued, would call Victoria's presence in their lives normal, would be devastated when it inevitably ended. Because it would end, wouldn't it? Women like Victoria didn't stay with men like Wyatt. Jennifer had proven that. The whole world had proven that over and over. Men with dirty fingernails and high school diplomas didn't get fairy tale endings with CEO heiresses. Wyatt's voice came out hollow. I need to think. Of course, take all the time you need. But Mr. Sullivan, if you truly care about Victoria, you'll consider whether holding on to her is actually selfish. Whether you're preventing her from finding someone who can give her the complete life she deserves. The call ended. Wyatt sat in his workshop, surrounded by tools that had served him faithfully for 20 years, and felt the careful foundation he'd built start to crack. Monday through Wednesday blurred together. Work, Finn, exhaustion. Victoria texted twice asking if he was free to talk. Wyatt responded with vague excuses about busy schedules. Thursday she called. He let it go to voicemail. Friday morning brought another call. This time Wyatt answered, unable to avoid her forever. Victoria's voice held an edge he hadn't heard before. Are you avoiding me? I've been busy. That's not an answer. Fair point. Wyatt set down the invoice he'd been filling out. I need some space to think. Silence stretched between them, heavy with hurt. When Victoria spoke again, her words came carefully. Is this about what Constance said at the wedding? She called me Saturday night after I dropped Finn off. More silence then. What did she say? Truth mostly. That we're from different worlds. That I can't give you the life you're used to. That eventually you'll realize that and leave, and my son will be the one who gets hurt. Wyatt, that's not, isn't it, though? His voice roughened. Victoria, be honest. 5 years from now, when you need a date to some black tie charity event, are you going to want me there? When your business partners ask about your personal life, are you going to be proud to say you're with a plumber? Yes, no hesitation. Absolutely yes. You say that now, but we've known each other a week. You don't know if that's true. Neither do you. Her voice went sharp with frustration. So what, we just give up? Let Constance win, prove her right about everything. This isn't about winning, it's about being realistic, about protecting Finn from getting attached to someone who might not stay. The words hung there ugly and honest. Victoria's breath caught audibly. Someone like me, or someone like your ex-wife. Direct hit. Wyatt's chest tightened. I just need time to figure out if this is actually possible or if we're kidding ourselves. Fine, take your time. But Wyatt, don't take so long that you mistake fear for wisdom. She hung up. Wyatt stared at his phone and hated himself a little bit. 2 weeks passed in gray routine. October slid into November. Wyatt worked, picked up, Finn cooked dinner, helped with homework, tucked his son in, and tried not to think about slate-colored eyes and a woman who'd made him feel seen. Finn noticed, asked questions. Wyatt deflected. Why don't we see Miss Victoria anymore? Did something happen? Are you sad again, like after Mom left? No. Wyatt lied. Everything's fine. Thursday before Thanksgiving. Wyatt's phone rang at 2 in the afternoon. He was under a sink in West Seattle, wrench in hand, when he saw Finn's school on the caller ID. His heart dropped. This is Wyatt Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan, this is Nurse Reynolds at Greenwood Elementary. Finn had an accident at recess. He's okay, but he hit his head and we need you to come pick him up. We recommend taking him to the doctor just to be safe. Wyatt was in his truck before the call ended. Made it to the school in 14 minutes, found Finn sitting in the nurse's office with an ice pack pressed to his forehead. The boy's eyes went huge with relief when Wyatt appeared. Dad? Wyatt knelt, careful hands checking the bump. Hey, buddy, you okay? Fell off the monkey bars. It was stupid. Falls happen. That's why they put bark chips underneath. He thanked the nurse, signed Finn out, carried him to the truck, even though the kid was probably too big for that now. The urgent care clinic confirmed mild concussion. Rest monitoring, keep him home from school tomorrow. Finn dozed against Wyatt's shoulder in the waiting room, small and vulnerable, and everything in Wyatt's world that mattered. Walking back to the truck, Finn's voice came out small. Dad, can we call Miss Victoria? Wyatt's throat went tight. Why? I want her to know I'm okay. She'd worry. The words hit like a brick to the sternum. Finn had only met Victoria once briefly, but he'd already assigned her a place in their lives. Already expected her to care. Already building connections that would shatter when the inevitable happened. I don't think that's a good idea, bud. Why not? Finn pulled back to look at Wyatt's face. Did you guys have a fight like you and Mom? It's not like that. Then what's it like? How to explain adult fears to a child who still believed love was simple? Wyatt buckled Finn into the passenger seat, trying to find words that wouldn't wound. But before he could speak, Finn's hand shot out, grabbed Wyatt's phone from the cup holder. The kid was fast when motivated. He scrolled through contacts with the efficiency of someone who'd grown up with technology. Finn, give me the phone. Too late, the call connected. Victoria's voice came through the speaker, surprised and pleased. Wyatt, Finn's words tumbled out. It's not Wyatt, it's Finn. I fell off the monkey bars and hit my head, but I'm okay now. The doctor said mild concussion and I have to stay home tomorrow, but Dad says I can't call you and I don't understand why. Silence, then Victoria's voice gentler than Wyatt had ever heard it. Oh, Finn, I'm so glad you're okay. Are you dizzy, nauseous? A little dizzy. Dad's taking care of me, though. I'm sure he is. Your dad's very good at taking care of people. Finn's eyes found Wyatt's too knowing. Miss Victoria, do you like my dad? Another pause. Wyatt reached for the phone, but Finn twisted away. Victoria's answer came careful but honest. Yes, I like your dad very much. Then why aren't you guys together anymore? Did he do something dumb? Finn. Wyatt tried to intervene, but his son was on a mission. Victoria actually laughed, though it sounded watery. No, honey, your dad didn't do anything dumb. Sometimes grown-ups get scared. We make things complicated when they should be simple. That's what I told Dad. You're both people. That's the same world. You're a very smart kid, Finn. Will you come visit? I miss you. And I think Dad does too, even though he won't say it. Wyatt finally managed to wrestle the phone away. Finn, enough. Go wait in the truck. The boy climbed down, shooting Wyatt an accusatory look that said adults are stupid before slamming the door. Wyatt put the phone to his ear. Victoria, I'm sorry. He shouldn't have. Don't apologize. Finn's right. I do miss you both. Her voice was quiet. How is he really? Mild concussion. Needs rest. Should be fine in a few days. And you? How are you? The question opened something in Wyatt's chest that he'd been keeping locked. Honestly, terrible. I've been miserable for 2 weeks trying to convince myself staying away from you is the right thing. Is it working? No. Victoria's breath hitched. Wyatt, I know Constance got in your head. I know you're worried about Finn, but hiding from this isn't protecting anyone. It's just making us both lonely. She was right. Of course she was right. But admitting that meant admitting fear, meant being vulnerable, meant risking the kind of pain that had nearly destroyed him when Jennifer left. I don't know how to do this. Be with someone like you when I'm someone like me. You're overthinking it. We're just two people who make each other feel less alone. Everything else is noise. Two people. Same world. Finn's words echoed in Wyatt's skull. Can we talk in person? Yes, please, yes. Victoria sounded almost desperate. When? I need to get Finn settled. Keep an eye on him tonight. But tomorrow, can you come here for Thanksgiving dinner? My parents' house. It's not fancy, but I'd love that. Text me the address. They hung up. Wyatt climbed into the truck where Finn sat with his arms crossed, looking smug despite the ice pack. So she's coming tomorrow. Yeah, she's coming. Good, you were being dumb. Wyatt pulled his son close, careful of the head injury. Yeah, I was. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and clear. Wyatt woke at 6, started prep work for the green bean casserole he always prepared. Finn appeared at 7, forehead bruise yellowing, but otherwise recovered, chattering about seeing Victoria again. They drove to Wyatt's parents' house in Ballard, the same modest split level where he'd grown up. His mother had the turkey in by 8, the house already smelling like sage and butter. His father was watching football, yelling at the television about bad calls. Wyatt's mother, Margaret, wiped flour-dusted hands on her apron. So, you're bringing someone today? Your text was cryptic. Her name's Victoria. We're seeing each other. Sort of. It's complicated. She treats you good. The question was simple but weighted. Margaret had never forgiven Jennifer for leaving, for abandoning Finn, for making her son feel inadequate. She'd be watching Victoria with hawk eyes, looking for any sign this might be a repeat performance. She treats me like I matter. Like what I do has value. Margaret's expression softened. Then I'll like her just fine. Victoria arrived at 2, pulling up in her Mercedes that looked wildly out of place on the street full of Fords and Toyotas. She'd dressed down, jeans, sweater boots that probably still cost more than Wyatt's monthly rent, but at least didn't scream corporate executive. Her hair was down again, and she looked nervous. Finn ran out before Wyatt could stop him, threw himself at Victoria with 7-year-old enthusiasm. She caught him laughing, checking his forehead with gentle fingers. "You're okay. Oh, thank goodness. Told you I was tough." Victoria's eyes found Wyatt over Finn's head. The look that passed between them held apology and hope and question marks. Wyatt walked down the porch steps, pulled her into a hug that felt like coming home. "I'm sorry for pulling away, for being scared." Her arms tightened around him. "I'm sorry, too, for not understanding how hard this is for you." They stood that way for a moment, Finn wedged between them, forming a unit that felt right despite all logic. Inside, Margaret descended with the force of a protective mother bear. She hugged Victoria, took her coat, ushered her to the kitchen table with the efficiency of someone who'd been hosting Thanksgiving for 40 years. Wyatt's father, Hank, appeared from the living room, assessed Victoria with one long look, then nodded approval. "Heard you stood up to some fancy society lady at a wedding. Good for you. Those types need taking down a peg." Victoria blinked clearly, not expecting that. "Thank you, sir." "Don't call me sir. I'm Hank. This here's my house and nobody stands on ceremony. Grab a beer and tell me if you think that referee's blind or just corrupt." By 4 o'clock, the house was full. Wyatt's sister arrived with her husband and 2 kids. His uncle showed up with pumpkin pies. Victoria fit herself into the chaos with surprising ease, helping set the table, entertaining Finn's cousins, laughing at Hank's terrible jokes. Dinner was loud and messy and perfect. Turkey stuffing, mashed potatoes, gravy, cranberry sauce from a can because that's how Margaret had always done it. People talked over each other, argued about football, told stories Victoria couldn't possibly follow. She soaked it in like someone discovering water after a desert crossing. After dessert, Wyatt found her on the back porch, wrapped in her coat, staring at the dark backyard. "You okay?" She turned eyes bright. "Your family is wonderful. They're loud and opinionated and drink too much. They're real. They love each other without conditions. Do you know how rare that is?" Wyatt leaned against the railing beside her. "This is my world. Small house, cheap beer, family gatherings where everyone has an opinion about everything. It's not galas and boardrooms." "I don't want galas and boardrooms. I want this." She gestured toward the house, toward the warmth spilling from windows. "I've spent my whole life in rooms where everyone's performing, where love comes with asterisks and conditions. Your family just loves. Simply. Completely. That's worth more than any boardroom I've ever been in." Something in Wyatt's chest unlocked. He pulled Victoria close, kissed her forehead, breathed her in. "I was scared. Of you leaving like Jennifer did. Of Finn getting hurt. Of not being enough. You are enough. You've always been enough. The problem was never you. It was everyone else being too blind to see it." They stood together in the cold, and Wyatt felt pieces of himself settling back into place. Pieces he hadn't realized had been scattered. His phone buzzed. Work number. Wyatt almost ignored it, but something made him check. The text was from his biggest client, the property management company that handled maintenance for 3 apartment complexes. "Effective immediately, we're terminating our service contract with Sullivan Plumbing. Thank you for your work. Final payment will be issued within 30 days. Wyatt read it twice. 3 times. The words didn't change. 40% of his monthly income gone with one text message. Victoria noticed his expression. "What's wrong, Memo?" He showed her the phone. Watched understanding dawn across her face, followed quickly by anger. "Constance, she's doing this." "You don't know that?" "Yes, I do. This is exactly how she operates. Quiet pressure, strategic phone calls, making it impossible to prove, but impossible to ignore." Victoria's hands clenched. "She's trying to destroy you financially. Make you look unstable. Force you to choose between your business and me." The strategy was elegant and vicious. Constance couldn't directly attack Wyatt without looking petty, but she could make his life difficult enough that eventually he'd walk away on his own, blame himself for not being successful enough, prove her point about class incompatibility. "Maybe she's right." The words tasted like ash. "Maybe I can't do this. provide for Finn, and build a business and have a relationship with someone whose ex's mother can destroy everything with one phone call. Don't you dare give her that power. Victoria's voice went sharp. Wyatt Sullivan, you are not walking away because someone threatened you. That's not who you are. I'm trying to be practical. No, you're trying to be scared. There's a difference. She grabbed his shoulders, forced him to meet her eyes. Fight with me. We'll figure this out together. How, how do we fight someone with unlimited resources and connections everywhere? Victoria's smile turned predatory. By being smarter, and by remembering that I have resources too. And unlike Constance, I'm willing to use them for good instead of petty revenge. Before Wyatt could respond, his mother called from inside. Pie and coffee ready. They went back into the warmth, but the conversation hung unfinished between them, a promise and a challenge. That night, after taking Finn home and tucking him in after Victoria left with a kiss that tasted like cinnamon and hope, Wyatt sat in his workshop trying to figure out how the hell to fight an enemy who moved in shadows. His phone rang at midnight. Unknown number again. Wyatt almost threw the device against the wall. What now? Nathaniel Bennett's voice came through shaky and desperate. Wyatt, I need to talk to you about Victoria, about my mother, about everything I should have done differently and didn't. Wyatt stared at his phone, Nathaniel Bennett's name glowing on the screen. Every instinct screamed to hang up, to refuse whatever olive branch or manipulation this call represented. But curiosity won over caution. It's midnight. What do you want? Nathaniel's voice came through ragged, like he'd been crying or drinking, or both. I know, I'm sorry, but I need to tell you something about my mother, about what she's doing to you and Victoria, about what she's done before. The words hung weighted with implications. Wyatt sat down slowly in his workshop chair. I'm listening. My mother doesn't just disapprove of people. She destroys them. Systematically, quietly. I've watched her do it my whole life. Nathaniel's breath came uneven. When I was 23, I dated a woman from Portland, school teacher. Her family ran a small catering business. My mother deemed her unsuitable. Within 6 months, the catering company lost every major contract. Health inspections found violations that didn't exist. The teacher lost her job over fabricated complaints. They had to leave Oregon entirely. Ice spread through Wyatt's veins, and you let that happen. I was weak. I am weak. I've spent my whole life letting my mother make decisions for me, and everyone I've ever cared about has paid the price. The confession came out bitter. Victoria, most of all. She loved me for 10 years, and I repaid her by choosing my mother's approval over her happiness. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm miserable. Because Amanda's pregnant with twins, I'm not sure I want married to a woman I don't love living a life my mother scripted for me. And because I just got off the phone with someone at Constance Bennett's country club who mentioned how unfortunate it was that you'd been losing contracts lately. My mother was bragging about it, about how she was teaching Victoria a lesson about appropriate partners. Wyatt's hands clenched. So what you want? Absolution. Want me to say it's okay you let your mother ruin people's lives? No, I want to help you stop her. I have information, documents, proof of things she's done that would make her very vulnerable if they became public. The offer felt like quicksand, tempting but treacherous. Why would you turn on your own mother? Because I'm tired of being afraid, because Victoria deserved better and I failed her, but maybe I can help her now. Because maybe if I do one decent thing in my miserable life, I can look at myself in the mirror without hating what I see. Nathaniel gave Wyatt an address, coffee shop in Capitol Hill. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. He'd bring everything he had, no strings, no conditions, just the chance to finally do something right. The call ended, and Wyatt sat in the dark trying to decide if this was salvation or another trap. He called Victoria. She answered on the first ring, voice alert, despite the hour. Wyatt, what's wrong? Nathaniel just called. He wants to meet tomorrow. Says he has information about Constance that could stop her. Silence then. It could be a trick. Could be, or it could be genuine. Do you trust him? Wyatt considered the question carefully. I trust that he's desperate. Desperate people sometimes tell the truth because they've got nothing left to lose. I'm coming with you to the meeting. If this is real, I need to be there. If it's a setup, you shouldn't face it alone. The automatic protest died before Wyatt could voice it. He was done pretending. He didn't need her done pushing her away out of misguided protection. Okay, together. They met at Victoria's penthouse at 8:30. She'd barely slept, circles dark under her eyes. Coffee sat untouched on her kitchen counter. Wyatt pulled her close, and they stood that way for a long moment, gathering strength from each other. The drive to Capitol Hill was tense and quiet. The coffee shop Nathaniel had chosen was deliberately public, crowded with laptop workers and students. He sat in the back corner, looking like hell. Unshaven, rumpled suit, eyes bloodshot. A messenger bag rested at his feet. Nathaniel stood when they approached, but didn't extend his hand. "Thank you for coming." They sat. Victoria's posture was rigid, every line of her body screaming distrust. Wyatt stayed close enough that their shoulders touched, a united front. "Show us what you have." Nathaniel pulled out a manila folder thick with papers. "My mother runs the Bennett Family Trust. Charitable foundation, very public, very prestigious. What most people don't know is that she's been using it to funnel money into her personal accounts for years. Tax fraud, embezzlement. I found these last year when I was reviewing estate documents." He spread papers across the table, bank statements showing transfers, invoices for services that were never rendered, tax filings that didn't match actual expenditures. A pattern of theft spanning almost a decade, totaling well over $2 million. Victoria leaned forward, scanning documents with the practiced eye of someone who understood corporate malfeasance. "Why didn't you report this?" "Because I'm a coward. Because she's my mother, and turning her in felt like betrayal. Because I kept hoping she'd change that somehow. If I was good enough and obedient enough, she'd become the mother I needed instead of the tyrant she actually is." Nathaniel's voice cracked on the last word. He looked at Victoria with raw desperation. "I know you hate me. You should. I hate myself. But please use this. Stop her before she destroys more lives the way she destroyed ours." Victoria's hand moved toward the documents, then stopped. "If we use this, she'll know you gave it to us. She'll come after you." "Let her. I'm already in hell. At least this way I'll have earned it." They took the documents, photocopied everything at a nearby print shop. Wyatt watched Victoria's mind working, strategy forming behind those sharp eyes. By the time they left, she had a plan. The weekend passed in careful preparation. Victoria called in favors from attorneys who specialized in nonprofit fraud. Wyatt worked his regular jobs, trying to maintain normalcy for Finn, despite the storm gathering. Sunday evening, everything was ready. Monday morning, Victoria made 3 phone calls. First, to the IRS anonymous tip about Bennett Family Trust irregularities. Second, to the Seattle Times, suggesting they investigate charitable foundation mismanagement in old money families. Third, to Constance Bennett's personal attorney, requesting a private meeting. The meeting was set for Tuesday afternoon. Neutral Territory Conference Room at a downtown law office. Victoria brought her own attorney, a woman named Sarah Chen, who looked like she ate litigation for breakfast. Wyatt came because Victoria asked him to, because his presence served as a reminder of what this fight was actually about. Constance arrived in designer armor, Chanel suit, perfect hair, expression carved from marble. Her attorney was older, distinguished, clearly used to winning through intimidation. They sat across the polished table like generals preparing for war. Constance's smile held no warmth. "Miss Lawson, how dramatic. What exactly do you hope to accomplish with this theater?" Victoria slid the folder across the table. "I'm accomplishing the end of your crusade against Wyatt and me. You're going to withdraw whatever pressure you've applied to his business contacts. You're going to leave us alone completely. And you're going to do it today." Constance barely glanced at the folder. "Or what, you'll continue dating someone wholly inappropriate out of spite. I think we both know this relationship won't last." "Open the folder." Something in Victoria's tone made Constance pause. She flipped it open. Wyatt watched color drain from her face as she recognized bank statements, recognized her own signature on fraudulent documents, recognized exposure. Her attorney leaned over, scanned quickly, went very still. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "Where did you obtain these? Doesn't matter. What matters is they're authentic in their evidence of multiple felonies. Tax fraud, embezzlement, wire fraud. Enough to put Mrs. Bennett in federal prison for 15 to 20 years. Constance's hands shook before she pressed them flat against the table. You're bluffing. You wouldn't actually report this. I already have. Anonymous tip to the IRS this morning. They'll begin an audit within the week. The Seattle Times is also investigating, though they don't have copies of these documents yet. That can change in about 60 seconds if you'd like to test my resolve. The silence in the room was absolute. Constance's perfect composure cracked, revealing something desperate underneath. Her attorney was already calculating damage control, running through options that all looked bleak. Wyatt found his voice. You threatened my son. You attacked my business because you couldn't stand the idea that Victoria chose someone you considered beneath her. You've spent your whole life making people feel worthless because you're too insecure to accept that worth isn't measured in bank accounts. Constance's eyes snapped to him, fury blazing. You know nothing about me. I know you're terrified that without your money and your name and your control, you're nothing. That's why you need to make everyone else feel small. Because if they didn't, they might notice you're not actually as important as you pretend to be. The words hit like artillery fire. Constance's face went white, then red, then white again. Her attorney put a hand on her arm, but she shook him off. You can't prove I had anything to do with Sullivan Plumbing losing contracts. We don't need to prove it for it to be true. Victoria's voice stayed ice calm. Here's what's going to happen. You will personally contact every business owner you influenced and recommend they reconsider. You will stay out of our lives completely. You will not speak to Wyatt, to me, or to Finn. In exchange, I'll sit on these documents. The IRS will conduct their audit and find irregularities, but without these specific papers, it'll be messier and longer. You'll have time to fix the problems, pay back what you stole, and avoid prison. And if I refuse, then I give everything to federal prosecutors and the media. Your reputation will be destroyed. Your charitable foundation will collapse. Your social standing will evaporate. And you'll spend the rest of your life in a prison cell, which honestly might be what you deserve. Constance sat very still. Years of cultivated superiority warred with the reality of checkmate. Her attorney whispered something urgent, but she wasn't listening. She was staring at Victoria with an expression Wyatt couldn't quite read. Hatred, yes, but also something else. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Finally, Constance spoke, voice stripped of its usual authority. You've won. Congratulations. This wasn't about winning. This was about you learning that there are consequences for cruelty. Constance stood, dignity in tatters, but still clinging to the scraps. I'll make the calls. You'll have your contracts back within the week. She walked out. Her attorney gathered the papers with shaking hands, muttered something about discussing options, and followed. The door clicked shut, and suddenly the room felt 20 degrees warmer. Victoria sagged in her chair. Sarah, the attorney, patted her shoulder. That was perfect. She won't cause trouble again. People like her can't handle being vulnerable. After Sarah left, Wyatt and Victoria sat alone in the conference room. The Seattle skyline stretched beyond the windows, bright with December afternoon light. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Wyatt reached across the table, took Victoria's hand. You were terrifying. I was protecting my family. The word family hit Wyatt square in the chest. Family. Not boyfriend, not partner, not some casual label. Family. Is that what we are? Victoria's eyes met his, softer than he'd ever seen them. If you want to be. If you're willing to try despite all the complications and class differences and everything that's supposed to make this impossible. I'm willing. The words came easier than expected. I've been willing since you took my hand at that wedding and didn't let go. They left the building together, stepping into cold December air. Wyatt's phone buzzed immediately. 3 text messages. His property management client apologizing for hasty termination, asking if he'd reconsider the contract. Another building owner, Victoria hadn't even mentioned, wanting to discuss maintenance needs. A third company he'd worked with 2 years ago, suddenly remembering they needed plumbing help. Constance moved fast when motivated. Good to know. Christmas approached with the relentless cheer Seattle always mustered, despite gray skies and constant rain. Wyatt's business stabilized, then improved beyond where it had been before the sabotage. Apparently, Constance's recommendations carried weight even when coerced. He hired an assistant to help with the workload, a young woman fresh out of trade school who attacked pipework with enthusiasm bordering on religious fervor. Victoria became a fixture in their lives. Dinner twice a week alternating between Wyatt's small house and her penthouse. Finn adored her, dragged her to dinosaur exhibits and science museums, taught her how to build elaborate Lego structures. She learned to make grilled cheese sandwiches and helped with homework and slowly stopped looking quite so uncomfortable in settings that didn't require designer suits. Wyatt met Victoria's father in late January. Richard Lawson was 75, retired from running Lawson Pharmaceuticals, but still sharp as surgical steel. He came to Wyatt's house for dinner, insisted on bringing wine that probably cost more than Wyatt's truck, and spent 2 hours grilling him about business practices and philosophy. Richard's questions were direct. You married before? Yes, sir. Didn't work out. Why not? She wanted more than I could give. More money, more status, more everything except what I actually had to offer. Richard studied Wyatt over his wine glass. My daughter has more money than she can spend in 3 lifetimes. What can you offer her that's worth having? The question would have destroyed Wyatt 6 months ago. Now he met Richard's gaze steadily. Honesty, presence. Someone who sees her as Victoria not as a bank account or status symbol, and a 7-year-old who thinks she hung the moon. Richard's stern expression cracked into a smile. Good answer. My late wife would have liked you. She always said the measure of a man wasn't his portfolio, but his principles. By February, the pattern of their lives had settled into something sustainable. Wyatt worked during the day while Finn was at school. Victoria managed her company with slightly less obsessive dedication than before actually leaving the office by 6 most evenings. They had dinner together 4 or 5 nights a week, either as a trio or with Wyatt's parents joining. Finn called Victoria by her first name, but the word came out with affection that suggested more. One Saturday in March, Wyatt took Finn to the hardware store for supplies. They were comparing drill bits when Finn's voice went carefully casual. Dad, are you going to marry Victoria? Wyatt nearly dropped the drill. What makes you ask that? You love her, she loves you. That's what people do when they love each other. They get married. 7-year-old logic, simple and devastating. Wyatt crouched to his son's eye level. Would you be okay if I did? Finn's face split into that gap-toothed grin. Are you kidding? That would be awesome. She's like the best mom ever, and she's not even officially my mom yet. Yet. The word carried so much hope, Wyatt's throat went tight. That evening after Finn was asleep, Wyatt sat in his workshop staring at his phone. He'd been planning this for weeks, working up courage, waiting for the right moment. But there were never right moments. There was only now and fear and the possibility that she might actually say yes. He called Victoria. Can you come over? I know it's late, but I need to ask you something. 20 minutes later, she appeared at his door, concern etched across her features. Is Finn okay? Are you okay? We're fine, better than fine. Come with me. He led her to the workshop. Tools hung organized on pegboards. The workbench held a project he had been laboring over for weeks. A wooden box cherrywood hand-carved with intricate detail. He'd made it himself, every joint perfect, every surface smooth as silk. Victoria's hand traced the carvings. Wyatt, this is beautiful. What is it? Open it. Inside, nestled in velvet, he'd agonized over selecting sat a ring. Not a diamond because that felt wrong somehow. Instead, a sapphire the color of slate, the color of Victoria's eyes set in simple platinum. Wyatt had spent hours with the jeweler getting it exactly right, using money he'd saved specifically for something important. Victoria's breath caught. Her hand covered her mouth. Tears spilled over, despite obvious efforts to contain them. Wyatt took her other hand, held it carefully. I know we've only known each other 6 months. I know this is fast, and there are 1,000 reasons why we should wait. But Victoria, I've spent 5 years being alone, and 2 weeks nearly destroyed me. I don't want to waste any more time being careful when I could be happy instead. Marry me. Be Finn's mother officially. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that men are measured not by what they own, but by how fiercely they love. The last part came out rougher than intended, but Victoria was already nodding, already crying, already saying yes before he'd finished speaking. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly because he'd stolen one of her other rings to check the size. She kissed him, and it tasted like salt and joy and promise. Yes, absolutely yes. I've never wanted anything more in my life. They held each other in his workshop, surrounded by tools and sawdust and the evidence of years of honest labor. Somewhere in the house, Finn slept peacefully dreaming whatever 7-year-olds dreamed. Outside March, rain pattered against the windows. Inside, two people who weren't supposed to fit found that actually they fit perfectly. The engagement was short. Neither of them wanted elaborate planning or months of anticipation. They set the date for September, 6 months away, giving Victoria time to handle business obligations and Wyatt time to finish jobs he'd committed to. The wedding would be small, they agreed. Family and close friends, nothing fancy, nothing designed to impress. Planning happened in stolen moments between work and parenting and life. Victoria's father offered to pay for everything, but Wyatt insisted on contributing. They compromised on splitting costs, finding middle ground between Wyatt's budget and Richard's enthusiasm. The venue was a small winery in Woodinville, the same area where Nathaniel's wedding had been, but worlds different in atmosphere. Casual, warm, focused on celebration rather than display. Finn took his role as ring bearer with utmost seriousness. He practiced walking slowly, holding the pillow with exaggerated care until Wyatt and Victoria both dissolved into laughter watching him. Summer passed in a blur of happiness Wyatt had stopped believing possible. Victoria officially moved into his house in July, bringing surprisingly few possessions for someone who'd lived in a penthouse. Most of her furniture went to charity. The fancy clothes stayed in storage. She'd kept the Mercedes but started driving it less often, taking Wyatt's truck instead. Her corporate wardrobe gave way to jeans and sweaters on weekends. She learned to cook basic meals without burning anything. She attended Finn's summer baseball games and cheered louder than anyone else in the stands. She became part of the neighborhood, waving to others on evening walks, chatting with the postal carrier, belonging in ways Wyatt suspected she'd never belonged anywhere before. September 21st arrived with perfect weather. Clear skies, temperature in the mid-70s, the kind of day Seattle hoarded for special occasions. The winery's outdoor ceremony space overlooked rolling hills, covered in grapevines, starting to turn gold. Wyatt stood at the altar wearing the Hugo Boss suit from that first wedding, altered to fit properly now. Finn stood beside him in a miniature version, looking proud enough to burst. Hank and Margaret sat in the front row, his mother already crying. Richard Lawson occupied the seat beside them, distinguished and emotional, despite obvious attempts to hide it. The music started, Victoria appeared at the far end of the aisle, and Wyatt forgot how to breathe. She wore a simple ivory dress. Nothing elaborate, nothing designed to impress. Her hair was down, flowers woven through it, and she was crying before she'd taken 3 steps. Hank walked her down the aisle, the retired plumber giving away the CEO heiress, both of them grinning like this was exactly where they belonged. When they reached the altar, Hank kissed Victoria's cheek and whispered something that made her laugh through tears. The officiant was a friend of Victoria's father, someone who'd known her since childhood. His words were simple and honest, talking about love, that surprised you, about finding home in unexpected places, about building lives from broken pieces. Wyatt's vows came from his heart, unpolished but true. Victoria, you taught me that a man's worth isn't measured by his income or his education or where he comes from. It's measured by how he treats the people he loves, by the integrity he brings to his work, by his willingness to show up even when things are hard. You saw value in me when I couldn't see it in myself. You chose me when the world said you shouldn't. I promise to spend every day earning that choice, to love you fiercely, to support your dreams, to be the partner you deserve, and to share every home-cooked meal, every hardware store trip, every ordinary moment that makes life extraordinary. Victoria's vows matched his honesty. Wyatt, I spent 42 years believing I was incomplete, that my worth depended on what I could produce, what I could achieve, how perfectly I could perform. You showed me that I was never incomplete, that being enough isn't something you earn, but something you are. You didn't try to fix me because you never saw me as broken. You love Finn with a dedication that makes me believe in goodness. You work with your hands and create value that lasts. You taught me that real wealth isn't in bank accounts, but in Sunday dinners with people who love you without conditions. I promise to honor your work, to be the mother Finn deserves, to build a life with you that's genuine instead of perfect. Because perfect is overrated. Real is what matters. They exchanged rings. Finn produced them with theatrical flair beaming as he handed them over. The officiant pronounced them married, and Wyatt kissed his wife while 50 people cheered and Finn yelled finally loud enough to make everyone laugh. The reception was barbecue and beer and a playlist someone's cousin had assembled, dancing on a wooden platform under string lights, toasts that were equal parts roasting and genuine affection, Margaret crying happy tears, Richard telling embarrassing stories about young Victoria, Finn dancing with his new mother, both of them laughing. Late in the evening, Wyatt found Victoria sitting at a table's edge watching the celebration. He slid into the chair beside her, took her hand, felt the unfamiliar weight of wedding rings. No regrets. Not even close to one. They sat together while the party continued around them. Wyatt thought about the man he'd been 6 months ago, broken, scared, convinced he wasn't enough for anyone. Victoria had walked into his life demanding emergency pipe repair and ended up fixing something else entirely. Not fixing him because he'd never been broken, just showing him he'd been whole all along. What are you thinking about? Victoria's voice pulled him back. About how sometimes the worst days lead to the best things. If you hadn't had that pipe emergency, we never would have met. I think we would have found each other eventually. The universe doesn't let people who belong together miss each other forever. They stayed until the last guest left, until the venue staff started cleaning up, until Finn fell asleep in the car on the drive home. Victoria carried him inside while Wyatt handled their wedding gifts. They tucked him into bed together, moving with the synchronized efficiency of parents who'd done this 1,000 times. In their own room, Victoria kicked off her wedding shoes with visible relief. Wyatt loosened his tie, feeling the days settle into his bones. They'd have a honeymoon eventually, maybe next summer, when Wyatt could leave the business in his assistant's hands. For now, this was enough. This room, this house, this life they'd chosen. Victoria turned from the window. I love you. I know I said it in my vows, but I need you to hear it again. You made me believe in second chances. You made me believe I was worth having. They met in the middle of the room and the kiss tasted like beginning instead of ending. 2 years rolled past with remarkable speed. Finn turned 9, started 4th grade, discovered soccer with the same enthusiasm he'd once reserved for dinosaurs. Victoria's company thrived under her slightly less obsessive management style. Wyatt's business expanded enough that he hired 2 more assistants and started turning down jobs instead of accepting everything out of fear. They bought a bigger house in Ballard, nothing fancy, but enough space for Finn to have his own room and Victoria to have a home office. Wyatt's workshop got an upgrade. They hosted Sunday dinners that became neighborhood institutions, always too much food and too many people, and exactly right. Victoria cut her work hours to 40 a week, revolutionary for someone who'd routinely pulled 80. She attended every school event, every soccer game, every parent-teacher conference. She and Finn had developed their own traditions. Saturday morning pancakes, where they tried increasingly ridiculous recipes, Wednesday afternoon trips to the library, bedtime stories that often ran an hour because both of them got invested in the plot. One Sunday morning in October, Wyatt woke to an empty bed. He found Victoria in the kitchen making coffee, staring at something on her phone with an expression he couldn't read. Everything okay? She looked up, handed him the phone. An email from an adoption agency they'd been working with for 6 months. A baby girl 3 months old, emergency placement. The birth mother had chosen Victoria and Wyatt from dozens of profiles. Could they come meet her today? Wyatt read it twice, hard hammering. Are you ready for this? I've been ready for this my whole life. I just didn't know it came in the form of a plumber and his son, and now maybe a daughter. They woke, Finn told him the news. His whoop of excitement probably woke the neighbors. 2 hours later, they were at the agency, hearts in their throats, meeting a tiny human who might become their daughter. The baby had dark hair and enormous brown eyes and the most serious expression Wyatt had ever seen on an infant. Victoria held her, and something in her face transformed, became complete in a way Wyatt hadn't realized was missing. Finn peered over Victoria's arm. Can I hold her, Cheo? They sat together on the agency's couch, Finn cradling his potential sister with exaggerated care. Victoria's hand on his shoulder, Wyatt's arm around both of them. The social worker watched with knowing eyes, already filling out paperwork. What should we name her? Finn's whisper was reverent. Victoria looked at Wyatt. Wyatt looked at this tiny person who'd appeared in their lives like a miracle. What about Hope seems appropriate? Hope Sullivan. Victoria tried the name out. It's perfect. The process took months. Background checks, home studies, interviews, designed to determine if they'd be suitable parents. Wyatt stressed about his income compared to Victoria's worried social workers would see class mismatch as instability. But the lead caseworker was a woman who'd grown up in a working-class family herself. She saw what mattered: love, commitment, a stable home, full of warmth. Hope came home on a Tuesday in January. Finn had made welcome signs and decorated her nursery with hand-drawn pictures. Victoria took family leave from work the first time in 20 years she'd voluntarily stepped away from the company. Wyatt adjusted his schedule to be home more, hiring another assistant to cover the workload. The first weeks were chaos. Sleepless nights, constant feedings, the overwhelming responsibility of keeping a tiny human alive. But they managed together, taking shifts, supporting each other through exhaustion, finding joy in Hope's first smiles. One night, 3 weeks after Hope's arrival, Wyatt found Victoria in the nursery at 2 in the morning. She sat in the rocking chair, baby asleep against her shoulder, tears streaming down her face. "Hey." He knelt beside the chair. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. That's why I'm crying." Victoria's voice came out choked. "For years I believed I'd never have this. Never hold my own child, never be called mom, never experience what everyone said was the most important thing a woman could do. And now I have Finn, who chose me as his mother, and Hope, who needs me, and you, who sees me as whole instead of lacking. I spent so long believing I was incomplete, and I was wrong. I was always complete. I just needed to find the people who fit with me." Wyatt took her free hand, kissed her knuckles. "You've given me more than I ever thought I deserved. A wife, a daughter, a life that feels like home instead of just survival. We built something real out of a fake boyfriend arrangement. Best $350 I ever spent." She was laughing through tears now. "Hiring a plumber changed my entire life." They sat together in the dark nursery, Hope breathing steadily between them, and Wyatt felt contentment settle into his bones. This was what mattered. Not money or status, or proving anyone wrong. Just this: family created by choice, love built on foundation of genuine respect, ordinary moments that added up to extraordinary lives. Morning came too soon, as it always did with an infant in the house. Finn bounded in at 6, wanting to hold his sister before school. Victoria made pancakes while Wyatt changed Hope's diaper. The kitchen smelled like coffee and syrup and home. Wyatt's phone rang while they were eating. Unknown number, but he recognized the voice immediately when he answered. Constance Bennett sounded older than the last time they'd spoken. "Mr. Sullivan, I hope I'm not disturbing your breakfast." Every muscle in Wyatt's body tensed. Victoria looked up sharply, reading danger in his expression. "What do you want?" "To apologize. Properly. And to tell you something about Nathaniel that you should probably know." The words were so unexpected, Wyatt couldn't immediately process them. "I'm listening." "My son is getting divorced. Amanda left him, took the twins to her family in Charleston. He's alone and miserable, and finally seeing a therapist about his inability to stand up for what he wants." Constance's voice held something that might have been regret. "He told me recently that he gave you those documents about my financial misdeeds, that he chose conscience over family loyalty." I was furious at first. Then I realized he'd done something I never could. He'd been brave. Wyatt waited, unsure where this was headed. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I was cruel to you and to Victoria because I couldn't accept that worth isn't determined by pedigree. You've built a good life. From what I understand, you're adopting a child. That's admirable." She paused. "I wanted you to know that I've paid back the money I embezzled, set up a scholarship fund for trade school students in my husband's name. It doesn't erase what I did, but perhaps it's a start at doing something decent." The line went quiet. Then Constance spoke once more, softer. "Victoria chose well. Better than my son did. Better than I would have had I been in her position. Congratulations on your family, Mr. Sullivan. I hope you're all very happy." She hung up before Wyatt could respond. He set down the phone, slowly processing. Victoria's eyes were wide. What did she say? That we chose right. That she was wrong. That people can change even when you don't expect them to. They looked at each other across the breakfast table, Finn between them working on his pancakes, Hope in Victoria's arms making the small noises that meant she'd wake soon. Outside, October, rain fell steadily. Inside, warmth pushed back against the Seattle gray. Wyatt stood, walked around the table, kissed his wife's forehead and his daughter's downy hair, ruffled Finn's hair until the boy protested. This was his life now, his family, his home, built not on pretense but on truth, not on what they owned, but on how they loved. Some people measured success in dollars and status and impressive credentials. But Wyatt had learned that real success lived in Sunday dinners, in kindergarten art projects, and middle-of-the-night feedings with someone you loved. It lived in choosing courage over comfort, in building relationships on honesty, instead of performance, in recognizing that the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought or borrowed or faked. He'd started this journey as a plumber, hired to fix pipes and play pretend. He'd ended it as a husband, father, and the kind of man his own father would be proud of. Not because of what he'd achieved or accumulated, but because of what he'd chosen. Love over fear, truth over pretense, connection over isolation. The measure of a man wasn't his portfolio or his pedigree. It was his willingness to show up, to be vulnerable, to choose people over pride. And by that measure, Wyatt Sullivan was the richest man he knew.